Tennessee gets over the University of Florida. Austin, how are you, sir? Thanks for joining us this morning.
How's it going? How are you?
I couldn't be better, man. I know things are hopping at Volquest right now. And reminder to everybody, if you haven't signed up for the great work that they do there at Volquest, do it now. You're never going to be able to sign on for cheaper than you are right now as we get rolling with On3. Austin, they've got it going on offense. There's no doubt. This is an all-time performance from Hendon Hooker. Talk about the buzz after this game, because this is the stuff of legend. 22 of 28, 349 yards, 2 touchdowns, 112 yards on the ground. Every time a play needed to be made, he made it.
He made it. You're exactly right. Tennessee used him as their de facto running game in this game. Now, granted, Tennessee went for over 200 yards on the ground. Jabari Small got 90. Performance in this football game, he was really, really good from the get-go. He had kind of started slow those first 3 weeks and, kind of found his footing in this game, Jeff, and got off to a hot start. Last year, hot starts were what he was kind of known for. Kind of reverted back to that in this game. As you said, just the second Tennessee player of all time to go over 300 passing and over 100 yards rushing in the same game, joining Josh Dobbs, who was there on the field watching Hendon Hooker do his thing yesterday because the Cleveland Browns had played on Thursday night. So you had a lot of former Vols on the sidelines, a big recruiting weekend. Tennessee capitalized on a massive, massive atmosphere, and now they'll head into the bye week at a good time. They're a little bit banged up. Hendon's a little bit banged up. Got a little bit of a shoulder injury on the left non-throwing shoulder, but he'll be fine. He didn't have any ice on that thing at the end of the game. But, this is a huge, huge win for Tennessee.
Austin, Tennessee averaged 8.2 yards per play in this game, and that is absolutely massive. They needed all of it, though. If we do look at the other side of the ball, are there growing concerns about this secondary?
Well, I think there have to be, right, Jeff? I mean, like they give a lot of pad yesterday. I kept joking in the press box. I'm like, it was 3rd and 11. They're going to get to the 49. Okay, then they'll sit down at the 50 and they'll pick it up, right? I mean, it was just like, and then of course, when it actually happened, everybody would just laugh. And, it became this routine, deal in the football game. Now, the secondary had not played that bad up till yesterday. Tennessee's, rush defense has been really good all year. Rodney Gardner's taken a kind of an underwhelming unit as far as big names and gotten a lot of really good play out of them, which is no shock knowing Coach Gardner's track record. But the secondary had not been what it was yesterday all year. But yesterday it was really, really bad. I think clearly they were, trying to make sure Florida didn't run on them. But at some point there had to be an adjustment, and they did not adjust at all. They allowed Florida to just pick them apart. And again, Anthony Richardson had himself a career day. He threw for more yards yesterday than he had thrown for the first 3 games combined. And, part of that's the fact that Tennessee just allowed him to have massive windows to throw into. I could have completed those passes, and I'm no quarterback. So, it was one of those, perfect storms for Tennessee secondary. Had a weak moment. They need to get some guys healthy. They've got to continue to work depth and see what happens. But there's no doubt about Tennessee's 3 big defensive back commits in this 23 class sitting there in the stands yesterday can see there's immediate playing time available here.
It's interesting you mentioned the bye week, and I was just about to ask you, and I'm glad you brought up the health aspect of this. What can be done for Tennessee secondary? Because obviously at this rate, with the start that Tennessee has, you have an elite quarterback right now making big plays in the biggest moments. You allow yourself as a fan at this point to dream, right? Any team, any program that is flipping culture and starting to win some football games, and you infuse life into that group, they want to believe that, hey, man, all of a sudden we've got 2 major wins. If you think about the East, Tennessee is right there. Obviously, it'll be a big hump to try to hurdle over Georgia. But the bottom line is all of a sudden Tennessee's a team that would probably have their eyes on an SEC championship appearance. That's how fans think when you start like this and you have the offense to fall back on what can be done defensively to kind of shore things up and give them a shot.
Well, I think that you have to continue to get pressure on the quarterback. I think, a young player like Josh Josephs has got to get more playing time. Yesterday, he almost got home twice on Anthony Richardson. And if Anthony didn't have such a strong lower body and could get passes off, you're probably looking at 2 sacks. There were multiple times Tennessee got home yesterday, and Richardson is just so tough to get down that he gets some passes away that end up being incomplete passes or just throwaways but they saved Florida, 6 or 7 yards off a sack. I mean, there's a hidden yardage in a football game, and that's one of them for Florida, as long as he's the quarterback, just because he has that trait and that ability. So I think you want to continue to get pressure, which means I think you got to see more Josh Josephs. We'll see if James Pierce can work his way into being more of a factor, long term, and then just continue to mix and match, the secondary. Kamal hadn't had a terrible game yesterday. He was not good in coverage. He was not good at tackling. But, to this point, he's been Tennessee's best defensive back, and he had not played that way. So I think if you look up and Jaden, Daniels at LSU is doing the same thing that Anthony Richardson did in 2 weeks, then that's the biggest problem. I think right now you chalk it off as a one-off and work towards, trying to see if you can get, better depth, more playmakers in the secondary going forward. But again, I think this bye week comes at a perfect time for Tennessee. They get a chance to kind of, rest, reset, get on the road recruiting, get people healthy, and get ready for a big game at LSU. You go back to 2016, Jeff. Tennessee beat Florida. They beat Georgia. When you beat those two teams, you're almost a lock to go to Atlanta, right? Well, they didn't that year because they lost some games late. But after that Florida and Georgia win, the next week they went to A&M. That was a top 10 A&M team. Then they hosted Alabama. This year they play LSU and Alabama back-to-back, but there's a bye week in between, which I think is big because it allows Tennessee to scheme things up and get ready for LSU. An LSU team that is good, not great. An LSU team that, you talk about fans wanting to believe. You win that game and you beat Florida and LSU and Pittsburgh, and then Tennessee fans let themselves start dreaming a little bit because Alabama will come in that following weekend. If LSU or if Tennessee is beating LSU, they're likely a fringe top 5 team at that point. And of course, Alabama is top 5.
Out of curiosity, because it is one of the great settings in college football, Neyland Stadium, give me a sense of what that atmosphere was yesterday. It looked incredible on television. Obviously, everybody saw how pumped these fans are. You talk about a recruiting weekend. You talk about getting over on arrival. You talk about taking yet another step forward, kind of exercising the demons, if you will. The game gets crazy late. What was that atmosphere like?
It was unbelievable. I talked to multiple recruits this morning, including On3 5-star David Hobbs. Blown away by it. So much so that, he decided to go ahead and book his return trip for the Alabama game coming up October 15th, which will be an unofficial visit. This was a big weekend for the recruits, for Tennessee in recruiting. Everybody really, really feeling, that atmosphere yesterday. It was electric from the jump. The Vol Walk was massive. The buzz on campus all week really was something special. But I thought Neyland was really special yesterday. The checker Neyland, I know Tennessee's now 2-4 in those games. Most of that's because Tennessee's been so bad, and every time they check Neyland is for a big game. Nobody's checkering Neyland for Akron, right? So you're checkering it for Alabama, Georgia, Florida. But Tennessee hadn't won those games in the last 15 years. So Their record in those games is naturally going to be bad. But, Tennessee got the win yesterday. It's just a neat atmosphere. And, when Tennessee's on, Neyland is rocking. And when Neyland's rocking, the atmosphere is right up there with the best in college football.
Yeah, it's good for the sport. It's good to see. It's always fun when the better programs, the upper echelon programs, the programs of note, of merit in college football history are at their best. If you can get everybody doing it simultaneously, it's really fun. So we're seeing some teams now that have been down, making their way back up. You mentioned Tennessee. I've mentioned Florida State, a couple others. It's fun to watch the rise and see these stadiums fill up yet again. Hey, Austin, great work as always. Thanks for the time this morning, and enjoy that bye week, buddy. I know everybody can exhale.
Buddy, I'm going to enjoy it. I'm taking my kids out to California. We're going to go to Disneyland and go watch Nico Iamaleava play on Friday night. So we are excited to get out and go have a good time.
Now, that's how you utilize a bye week, sir. That's how you do it right there. Well done, and thanks for the time. I'll talk to you again later this year. Tennessee's going to be back on here again. We know it. I'll talk to you soon.
Sounds good. Appreciate it, Jeff.